Let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The courtroom was dead silent until the sound of an engine shattered everything. A deep, throaty roar bounced off the old brick walls of the Travis County Courthouse. Heads turned. Phones stopped scrolling. Even the judge paused her pen mid-stroke. Outside, tires rolled over gravel with the weight of something unresolved. The truck that pulled into the courthouse lot was no ordinary vehicle. It was dented, sun-bleached, and bore a jagged scratch down its side like a battlefield scar. But what made jaws drop was not the truck. It was the man behind the wheel. The soldier stepped out slowly, boots hitting the ground with heavy finality. He wore his formal army uniform, decorated, precise, and pressed like he had just come from a funeral. His face was weathered, marked with pain that no gavel could judge. Across his chest, Holt. He was supposed to be dead. Inside, Courtroom 4C was halfway through a custody trial. Vanessa Holt sat at the plaintiff's table, legs crossed, wearing soft beige like innocence itself. Her lawyer flipped through documents, building the lie, brick by brick. Your Honor, Mrs. Holt has provided every indication that her husband died during classified combat. The doors burst open. Every eye turned as Mason Holt walked down the aisle like a ghost with a mission. The judge's glasses slid down her nose. Vanessa's mouth parted, but no sound came out. Her lawyer stood, but he had no script for this. Mason dropped a thick manila folder on the defense table. Before we begin, he said, voice calm but cracking, I thought you might want to hear from the man who died. The judge stared. The audience gasped. And Vanessa? She whispered just loud enough. This was not supposed to happen. But it did. And now the question was, what else had she lied about? 8 months earlier, Vanessa stood beneath a massive black and gold banner that read, Honoring Our Fallen Ranger. She wore a simple black dress. Not too flashy, not too tight. Just enough to earn sympathy. Cameras clicked as a uniformed officer handed her the folded American flag. The crowd clapped politely. Her mascara smudged in all the right places. Beside her stood her sons, Eli and Max, dressed in little suits, clutching the hands of their Uncle Travis. No one questioned why Mason Holt's body was not in the casket. The military had issued a vague explanation, keyed during a classified operation. Remains unrecoverable. Vanessa let the phrase hang in the air. She knew people would not press further. And if anyone did, she had lines rehearsed. He died a hero. He did not suffer. He died doing what he loved. But behind closed doors, her hands moved faster than her tears. She had already emptied his savings account. His passwords? Stored years ago. His medals? Sold online to collectors. And the truck. God, that truck. Mason's '67 Ford F-100. He had rebuilt it from scrap, bolt by bolt. He loved it more than he ever loved birthdays or holidays. She sold it the next day. Cash deal. No trace. Travis, ever the opportunist, slid in easily. He took the garage, the recliner, the bedroom. Babe, we did what we had to, he said, lighting a cigarette. Ain't no one coming back from that dessert. Vanessa looked at the flame and whispered, let's hope not. But something in her voice trembled. A part of her knew Mason was not the kind of man who died quietly. She thought she buried a body, but what she buried was a warning. The first lie was the death certificate. Vanessa forged it late one night using an old VA template she downloaded from a hidden corner of the web. She edited the document with steady hands and cold fingers. Date of death, May 18th. Cause, enemy fire. Confirmed by no one. She filed it through a backdoor system using credentials Mason had once trusted her with. It went through. No red flags. No calls. Just silence. The second lie was to the boys. Daddy was very brave, she had said, kneeling beside Eli. But sometimes brave people do not come home. She watched as her son's mouth quivered, then hardened. He was 8 years old and already learning to live without truth. The third lie was to the government. She applied for survivor benefits within 24 hours. Claimed full custody. Declared mental instability on Mason's behalf, fabricating stories of nightmares, erratic behavior, even threats. She created a past Mason never lived, and the government believed every word. All it took was one signature. She sat in her new kitchen that afternoon, wine glass in hand, Travis's laughter echoing from the living room. The world believed she was grieving, but she was shopping for Caribbean real estate. What Vanessa did not know was that Mason had survived the ambush. His unit had been misled. The coordinates were off by 5 miles on purpose. He woke up in a makeshift camp weeks later. No dog tags. No ID. His name had already been crossed off. He was dead to the system, but not to her. And when he finally saw a headline about his heroic sacrifice, he did not scream. He smiled and whispered, "I am coming home." The first time Travis Cole saw Mason's empty side of the bed, he smirked. It had only been 2 weeks since the funeral, and he was already living in the house. His boots were by the door. His tools were on the kitchen counter. He had claimed Mason's garage like it was his birthright. He even drank from Mason's mug, the one that read, "Rangers lead the way." Vanessa did not resist. She said, "We need to move on," and poured him another drink. Travis had always lingered at the edge of their marriage. He had been Vanessa's high school boyfriend, charming, wild, and dangerous. He had no discipline, no loyalty, and no intention of becoming a better man. But after Mason left for deployment, Travis came sniffing around again. At first, it was innocent. Text messages. Then coffee. Then helping fix the gutters. Then staying the night when the boys were too sad to be alone. By the time Mason was declared dead, Travis had already moved in. "You were always too strict," he told Vanessa. "Too rigid. The boys need fun. They need someone who can teach them how to live." What he meant was, they needed someone like him. Someone who did not serve. Someone who never signed up to die in a foreign desert. Vanessa pretended to agree. But deep inside, a part of her still twitched when Travis touched the metals that once belonged to her husband. And yet, she let him take over Mason's role. She let him sell the truck. She let him park his rusted motorcycle in the garage Mason built with his own hands. But the one thing Travis could never become? A father those boys would respect. And soon, the disrespect would spread like wildfire. Mason's truck was not just a vehicle. It was a memory on wheels. Every bolt, every scratch, every dent had a story. He had rebuilt it during his second deployment recovery, pouring in hours of sweat under the Texas sun. He taught his sons how to hold a wrench in that garage. He drove them to school in that truck, windows down, country music playing. They called it the Beast. So when Mason searched his name in a secure military data leak forum and found the words "truck sold," VIN, 7 wide YEF, his throat closed. The same VIN was in his wallet, etched on an old service card he had laminated. He cross-checked the numbers again. It was not just a similar truck. It was his. He traced the digital trail. It led to a local collector named Randy Moore, who ran a restoration business but was known for shady flips. Mason put on a hoodie, limped to the shop, and saw it. Parked in the back lot under a tarp. The same deep green paint. The same Ranger badge on the back glass. The dent above the fender that happened when Max rode his bike into it. His truck. Still breathing. "Hey, can I help you?" Randy asked, stepping out with grease on his hands. Mason said nothing at first, then pulled out a photo, himself, Vanessa, and the boys, standing next to the truck. "I built that," he said. "And you bought it from someone who forged my signature." Randy froze. You were supposed to be, I know what I am supposed to be," Mason said. "Dead. Quiet. Forgotten." Randy backed up slowly. But Mason was not here for violence. He was here to reclaim his ghost. From the tree line behind his old house, Mason watched as his world moved on without him. Vanessa had redecorated everything. New porch lights. A white rocking chair where his tactical bench used to sit. Wind chimes replaced the flag he used to raise every Sunday morning. And inside? Travis. Laughing. Drinking. Living. Mason gritted his teeth. His boots sank into the damp earth as he crouched low, binoculars in hand. He had been watching for 4 nights. Every pattern, every movement, every lie lived out in real time. At 7:10 p.m., Vanessa poured Travis a glass of wine. At 7:14 p.m., Travis turned on Mason's old record player. At 7:17 p.m., Max peeked through the curtains, and for a second, seemed to look right at him. Mason ducked. His heart pounded. Could his son somehow feel him? Could the blood between them still speak? He waited an hour, then moved closer. Through a crack in the fence, he saw Travis toss a box into the trash, filled with old photo albums, rank patches, even his retirement plaque. Mason felt something burn inside his chest. But he did not move. Not yet. He saw enough. And as he stepped back into the woods, he whispered one sentence to the silence around him. They are using my memory to raise my sons. The moonlight cut through the trees as he disappeared into the shadows. But the war had begun. Not with guns. Not with commands. This would be a war of truths. And Mason Holt was about to make sure the first shot would be loud enough to wake the dead. Mason stared at the metal chain in his hand. The dog tags were scratched, bent, and caked with desert dust. But they were his. They should have been buried with him, except he was never really gone. The camp medic had tossed them into a black bag after the ambush. The body they pulled from the wreckage was unidentifiable. They assumed it was Mason. They sent the tags back to command and closed the case. But Mason survived. He clawed his way out of that firestorm with 2 broken ribs and a collapsed lung. A rebel farmer found him barely breathing, dragged him across the sand, and stashed him in a goat shed for 6 days. When U.S. forces returned, they thought they were recovering intel, not a living soldier. By the time Mason returned to U.S. soil, his file had already been marked Kia. Sir, there is no record of you being alive, the VA clerk had told him. I am standing right here, Mason replied. I understand, but I cannot find your status in the system. It says, deceased. That word burned deeper than any wound. So Mason stopped asking for help. He cut ties with the VA, burned his old mail, and decided if the world was going to treat him like a ghost, then maybe he could haunt the truth into the light. He tucked the dog tags into his pocket, then looked at the court summons he had forged himself, with a fake law firm name, carefully crafted to match the real one representing Vanessa. One more detail. One more move. Mason Holt was not just reclaiming his name. He was about to make the entire courtroom remember what a ranger really looked like. The walls of the hospital were pale green, too clean to feel human. Mason sat in a recovery bed, machines beeping around him, his shoulder wrapped in gauze and stitches. Captain Willis stood at the foot of the bed. We cannot make this public, Sergeant. This entire op is sealed. Your survival compromises that. I almost died for that op, Mason said. Now I have to die again for it? Willis sighed, folding his arms. You were technically dead. If word gets out, every enemy who heard you were Kia will be looking for your face. Mason clenched his fists. My wife buried me, sir. She sold my truck. She moved on with another man. Willis did not blink. That is not our concern. It is mine. They stared at each other, military tension between them like barbed wire. Mason knew the game. He had played it for years. Secrecy saved lives. But this was not just about duty. This was personal. She is raising my sons with a man who called me a coward behind my back, Mason said. Willis hesitated. Then disappear. Stay out of the light. Live quietly. That is the only way this ends clean. No, Mason said flatly. This ends when the truth is louder than the lie. That night, when no one was watching, Mason left the hospital, discharged himself, stole his own file from the records room, and slipped into the dark. He made a promise as he limped down the side street, hiding under streetlights and breathing through pain. I may be invisible on paper, he whispered, but when I come back, the world will feel it. Mason kept his head low as he moved through the shadows of Austin's forgotten alleys. He slept in a friend's hunting cabin outside the city. No phone, no power, no noise. Just time and silence and planning. He wore a beanie and a scruffy beard. Even the scar across his jaw, from that roadside blast, gave him a new face. He was the perfect ghost. No digital footprint. No military ID. No official status. He watched from a distance. Vanessa dropped off the kids at school every morning in Mason's SUV, the one she claimed she could not afford to keep. Travis sat in the passenger seat, sunglasses on, giving Max a thumbs up like he belonged there. Mason's stomach turned. He followed them to the grocery store. He watched Vanessa lie to the cashier about her husband's sacrifice. He listened to her accept sympathy she never earned. And he recorded every second. He bought a cheap burner phone, recorded conversations, captured video from long range, even bugged Travis's garage with an old surveillance mic he kept from an old recon mission. What he found made his blood run cold. Travis was not just playing stepdad. He was dealing pills, cash, handshakes, and alleyways. And Vanessa? She was in on it. What are we going to do when the benefits run out? Travis had said during one recording. Vanessa answered with a grin. Then we will finally sell the house. The kids will be fine. You and me, we will start fresh. Mason stared at the screen, shaking. This was not just betrayal. This was planned. Cold. Ruthless. They were using his death as a launch pad. But they forgot something. Rangers do not die easy. And Mason Holt was still breathing. It started with a receipt. A crumpled piece of paper in the trash near Travis's garage. Mason had learned to dig through silence, to see stories in discarded things. This receipt was for a wire transfer. Offshore. The name listed as the sender? Vanessa Holt. The destination? An account in the Cayman Islands under the name T. Cole Consulting, a company that did not exist. Mason stared at the numbers. It was not just a few $100s. It was $12,000. Moved in a single day, the day after the funeral. He pulled out an old field phone, hacked into a public Wi-Fi line from the library parking lot, and cross-checked routing codes. More transfers followed. The trail was sloppy, but Vanessa and Travis thought no one would ever look. After all, the only person who would care was supposed to be dead. That night, Mason visited the old Army buddy who had helped him set up his living trust before deployment, Logan Myers, now a paralegal working off the books. He handed him the receipts and whispered, I need to tie this to fraud. And I need it admissible. Logan frowned. You are legally dead, man. Not for long. Logan studied the documents. This looks bad. She lied to the government, moved death benefits offshore, and hid the money under a shell company. Mason leaned in. Can I get her in front of a judge? Logan nodded slowly. If we can show this touches the kids' finances, yes. Mason exhaled for the first time in days. Then it is time. He looked at the photo of his boys tucked inside his wallet. They do not get to grow up believing their father vanished. Before each deployment, Mason wrote letters. One for each of his sons. One for Vanessa. And one addressed to the day I do not come home. He kept them in a fireproof box under their bed. He had told Vanessa where to find them. Only if something ever happened. Now, inside Travis's garage, hidden behind oil cans and broken tools, Mason found the box. Unopened. The sticker seal he placed on top was still intact. Not a single envelope had been touched. He sat on the cold concrete floor, the oil scent thick in the air, and opened the box carefully. The first letter was to Max. If you are reading this, it means I could not keep my promise. But it does not mean I left you. I loved you from the first breath you took. I hope you remember how loud you used to laugh when I lifted you over my head. I hope you never forget who your father really was. Mason's eyes filled with tears. He read the second letter to Eli. Then the one to Vanessa, the hardest one. If I am gone, I trust you to protect them. To raise them with honor. To tell them who I was. Not perfectly, but truthfully. And to never let them believe I gave up on them. But Vanessa never read it. She never told the boys anything real. Mason folded the letters back, hands trembling. She had taken more than his name, his truck, and his home. She had taken his voice. And he was going to make sure she heard it again, in front of a full courtroom, under oath, with his sons watching. The bell above the garage door jingled as Mason stepped into the dimly lit shop. Behind the counter stood Warren Hawkins, one eye milky white, the other sharp as a hawk's, just like his call sign from Vietnam. Mason Holt, Hawk said, his voice a deep gravel tone. I thought you were a damn ghost. I am, Mason said. And I need help haunting some people. Hawk chuckled. You look like hell. Feels worse. They sat in the back room surrounded by tools and broken parts. Mason slid the photos across the table, the truck, the fake sale, the bank trail. I need to trace the VIN swap. I need to know how it got off the grid. Hawk adjusted his glasses. This is bad business. Whoever did this, they had help. DMV signatures, auction wipes, someone high up. I do not care who it was, Mason said. I just want the truth. And I want my truck back. Hawk stood, walked over to a rusted file cabinet, and pulled out a manila envelope. Inside were DMV records, altered. Yes, but not clean. This is your original plate number, Hawk said, pointing. And this is the current one. Travis re-registered it under a fake dealer shell company. Mason clenched his fists. Then he is traceable. Barely, Hawk warned. You are walking into fire, son. I already burned. Hawk nodded slowly. Then let me help you burn them back. He handed Mason a pair of keys, his keys. Hawk had cloned the duplicates when he first serviced the truck years ago. You are not the first soldier they tried to erase, Hawk said. But you might be the first who fights back loud enough. The house looked smaller than Mason remembered. Maybe because everything that made it a home was gone. Mason crouched low behind the neighbor's hedge, eyes locked on the front steps. It was Saturday morning. Sunlight spilled across the driveway. Vanessa opened the door holding 2 backpacks and a to-go coffee cup. Let's go, boys. Travis is waiting. Max came out first, dragging his feet. 8 years old, shaggy hair, same deep brown eyes Mason used to see in the mirror. Eli followed close behind, hugging a toy army figure. Then Max paused. He stood at the top of the porch stairs, eyes scanning the street, like he felt something. Mason ducked lower, heart pounding. Max tilted his head, then smiled, just a little, and whispered something to his brother. Eli turned too. They looked for 3 full seconds. Mason did not move. He could not move. And then Vanessa called again. Let's go, now. The boys snapped back into motion. They jumped into the back of the SUV, his SUV, and Travis revved the engine. The door slammed. The house was quiet again. But that moment stayed with Mason. Had Max seen him? Had he somehow recognized the energy of the father who kissed his forehead every night before deployments? Mason slipped back into the woods behind the property. No phone. No voice. No goodbye. But something inside him broke. His sons were still reachable. Still salvageable. And if they could feel him, then one day they would see him not through memories, but face to face. Mason had wired the mic under the nightstand 2 nights ago. Now he sat in Hawk's garage with headphones pressed tight, listening to every breath. Vanessa and Travis were in the bedroom, unaware they were being recorded. Their voices came through clear, too clear. You need to calm down, Vanessa said sharply. It is over. He is not coming back. I am telling you, Travis hissed. I have seen someone near the house. At night. Watching. It is your guilt, she snapped. You think Mason is some damn ghost? He is dead. We made sure of that. Made sure. Mason paused the recording. The words echoed like a gunshot. They had not just accepted his death. They had secured it. He hit play again. We need to finish the custody case, Vanessa said. Once that is done, we cash out the accounts. The boys will adjust. They are already calling you Dad half the time. Travis chuckled. You should have left that truck alone. He would have haunted the VIN before haunting us. Mason stood, ripped off the headphones, and stared at the recorder like it was on fire. He did not need more confirmation. He had heard their plan, their deception, their cold comfort in his absence. And now he had it all saved on tape. Admissible. Devastating. The court might have buried him on paper, but this tape would dig him right out. They think I am a ghost, he said to Hawk. Let us give them a reason to believe in one. Mason spread out the evidence across Hawk's garage table like a general planning a siege. Bank records. VIN documents. Signed affidavits from Logan Myers. The audio recording. Surveillance photos of Travis exchanging cash in a back alley. He stood over the collection of truth like it was an arsenal. No bullets. No blades. Just the kind of weapon no one saw coming, cold, silent, and undeniable. Hawk whistled. You got a case. A damn strong one. Mason nodded. Not just for fraud. For custody. For everything. And you are sure you want to go through the courts? Hawk asked. You could disappear. Let it go. Start fresh. Mason looked him in the eye. My sons are being raised on lies. I will not leave them with a story where I was weak, broken, or gone. I am going to walk into that courtroom alive and let the truth do what I could not from overseas. He began sorting the evidence into labeled folders. One for the judge, one for Vanessa's attorney, one for the media, in case the court tried to bury him again. Then he reached into a box and pulled out his dress uniform. It was clean, pressed, still fit. He dusted off the Ranger patch, ran his fingers over the stitched name tag, Holt, and zipped it into a garment bag. You sure you are ready for that room? Hawk asked. I am ready to make them remember, Mason said. He looked at the truck keys, then at the folders. Time to drive the truth straight through the front doors of justice. The wind carried dust across the edge of Travis County Elementary as Mason parked across the street in Hawk's borrowed Jeep. From a distance, the schoolyard looked like any normal morning. Children ran across the grass, backpacks bouncing. Teachers held coffee cups and smiled through the chaos. But Mason was not watching the teachers. He was watching the man who stepped out of his SUV with his sons, wearing sunglasses like he had earned that role. Travis. Mason watched closely. Max jumped out first, then Eli. Travis handed them lunch bags and ruffled Eli's hair like he was family. It made Mason sick. Then came the detail he had waited for. At 7:49 a.m., Vanessa pulled up in a second car. She kissed Travis goodbye, lingered by the window, and whispered something. A full custody handoff. The coordination was tight, like a pattern rehearsed. Mason snapped photos from inside the Jeep using a long lens. 7:51 a.m., Vanessa left. 7:55 a.m., Travis drove off in the SUV, alone. That was the window. Mason followed. The SUV led him to a quiet suburb 10 miles east, a place Mason did not recognize. Not their home. A second location. A hideout. Travis parked inside a low garage behind a privacy fence. Mason parked down the block, grabbed his bag, and climbed onto a rooftop across the street. He watched as Travis met a man by the side door. They exchanged envelopes. Travis pulled a handgun from a duffel bag. The other man laughed and nodded. Mason recorded everything. The final recon was done. This was not just a custody story anymore. This was a case of active danger. And now the courtroom would not just see a father. They would see a ranger reporting from the front lines. The next morning, Mason stood at the edge of the schoolyard. Not in plain sight, but close enough to feel the wind off the field where Max was kicking a soccer ball with another kid. Eli sat alone near the fence, staring at a crushed juice box like it was something sacred. A teacher, mid-30s, kind eyes, walked past him toward the gate. She paused. Can I help you, sir? Mason smiled gently. No, thank you. Just remembering someone. She looked again, confused. You seem familiar. I used to coach a little here. Years ago. She hesitated, nodded, and walked away, but looked back twice. Mason stepped behind a tree and pulled out his phone. He played the audio recording again, Vanessa's voice, cold and sharp. They will be fine. They're already calling him Dad half the time. His jaw clenched. He watched as Eli finally stood and walked toward the playground gate. But he did not go in. He stared across the street, right where Mason stood. For a moment, just a moment. Eli raised his hand. A tiny wave. Then he turned away and walked back. Mason stood frozen. He did not move, did not breathe. Could Eli somehow feel it? Could blood really speak without words? His heart screamed to run to him. But not yet. Not like this. This was a battlefield now, and victory would not come from emotion. It would come from evidence, from law, from cold truth. But that wave? That one, small moment? It lit a fire stronger than any mission Mason had ever fought. By nightfall, Mason had everything mapped out. But one piece remained blurry: Travis. Who he really was. Mason visited a local records office under a fake name. The clerk barely looked up as she printed 3 documents and slid them over. Mason opened the first, Travis Cole, arrest record, 2012 battery. Bar fight. No jail time. Dismissed after a witness vanished. Second file, 2015, restraining order. Filed by an ex-girlfriend. Unpredictable. Threatened to kill her cat if she talked. Charges dropped. Records sealed, but not erased. Third file? Travis was once investigated for impersonating a military officer. He wore camo to a fundraiser. Claimed to be special forces. Someone checked. It unraveled quick and quietly. He was never prosecuted. Vanessa never knew. Mason stared at the pages, hands trembling with a mix of fury and satisfaction. This was not just a man pretending to be a father. This was a man who specialized in pretending. And now? He was parenting Mason's sons. Mason folded the documents, placed them into a file labeled Unfit Guardian, and zipped it into his duffel beside the court folders. This was it. He had everything he needed for custody, for fraud, for exposure, but most of all for justice. And in just a few days, the court was going to meet the man they buried alive and realize they made a mistake that could not be undone. The receipt was smudged with grease and coffee stains almost thrown away, but it told a story. Hawk had found it beneath the bench in Travis's garage. A tiny scrap of paper that read, Service, VIN reassignment. Vehicle, 1967 Ford F-100. Client, Cole T. Mason held it between two fingers like it was evidence from a crime scene. It is real, Hawk said, his voice low. There is a backdoor shop out in San Marcos. They swap tags, clean titles, erase histories. It is not legal, but it is quiet. Mason's jaw tightened. That is where he took my truck. Hawk nodded. They even sprayed the undercarriage to hide the original frame numbers. Tried to kill the history. Mason stared at the old Ranger badge still clinging to the rear bumper. Half the chrome was chipped, but the name still reflected truth. Not good enough, Mason whispered. That night, Mason drove out to San Marcos. He parked down the street from the shop, a rusted building with a chain fence and half-lit sign, Rick's Customs. He waited until they closed, slipped through the back alley, and found the dumpster behind the shop. Inside were records, names, invoices, and one photograph. A Polaroid of his truck on a lift, halfway through repainting. Mason took everything. He returned to Hawk's garage, dropped the evidence on the table, and whispered, Now I can prove he erased me, not just in court, but under my own hood. Mason had planted the camera a week earlier. Hidden behind a dusty red Craftsman toolbox in Travis's garage, it had a perfect view of the entire back wall, the gun rack, the cash drawer, the duffel bags. Every night, Mason reviewed the footage. At first, it was boring. Travis working on engines, drinking beer, blasting music. Then, on the sixth night, motion detected. New faces. A man in a leather vest. A younger guy with tattoos up to his jaw. Cash exchanged. Something white passed between them. Sealed bottles with no labels. Pills. Travis was dealing, regularly, steadily, with rhythm, like a business. Mason froze the frame, printed the photo, and clipped it to the fraud file. He layered it with the VIN scam, the offshore account, and now, narcotics distribution. This was not just family court material anymore. This was criminal. He took the footage to Logan the paralegal, now fully locked into Mason's silent war. You show this to the judge, Logan said, and the hearing will not just shift, it will explode. Mason did not blink. That is the idea. Logan hesitated. What about the kids? They stay with me. Away from this. Away from him. Forever. Logan nodded slowly. Then we better get this right. Mason looked down at the printed still, Travis laughing, a wad of bills in one hand, a Ziploc in the other. He replaced me in their lives, Mason said quietly. Now I replace his. The envelope landed on Vanessa's kitchen table with a hard slap. She blinked at it, confused, then flipped it over. Notice of hearing, custody, and estate dispute. Motion filed by Mason Holt. Her wine glass tipped over. What the hell is this? She shouted. Travis looked up from the couch. What do you mean? She shoved the envelope into his chest. It says Mason filed it. Mason, this is not a joke. Travis opened it. Read. His face changed. He is alive? Vanessa's eyes were wide with panic. No, he cannot be. He was declared wrong, a voice whispered from the shadows of her thoughts. the voice of every lie she ever told. She reached for her phone. No voicemail. No texts. But her hand shook. This is not possible. If he was alive, the VA would have Travis stood. You said you were sure. You said we were safe. I was sure. Well, then how the hell is he filing legal motions? She backed up toward the wall, heartbeat pounding. What does he want? Travis stared at her. Everything. The prepaid phone buzzed at exactly 3 a.m. Vanessa fumbled for it, the dim screen lighting her bedroom with an eerie glow. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Hello. Static. Then a voice. Calm. Controlled. You signed my death certificate. Vanessa shot up in bed. Who is this? You sold my truck. Told my sons I was gone. You cashed out everything I bled for. She shook. Mason. Enjoy the courtroom. The call disconnected. Her fingers trembled. Her breath came in gasps. The walls felt closer than they had seconds ago. She dropped the phone. Down the hall, Travis groaned. What now? Vanessa whispered, he is alive. He is actually alive. Travis sat up. He cannot be. You said. I heard his voice. For the first time, Travis did not smirk. He looked toward the window. How much does he know? I do not know. But her voice said otherwise. She knew. She remembered the documents. The signatures. The offshore deals. The photos she burned. The one that showed Mason's GPS tracker was deliberately disabled during the mission. Travis's voice dropped. If he is alive, then he knows. Vanessa nodded slowly. And that is when the twist truly hit her. This was never just about family or revenge. If Mason was alive, he could expose who helped cover up his mission's ambush. And that secret could destroy more than just their lives. It could take down names inside the military. Travis slammed the kitchen drawer shut, nearly breaking the handle. Why the hell did you keep the letter? He shouted. Vanessa backed away. It was buried in the back of the cabinet. You said you destroyed it. I thought I did. The letter was old, faded, but the signature was unmistakable. A mission redeployment order, forged in Travis's handwriting. It was the document that rerouted Mason's unit into a kill zone, if anyone found it. It was not just betrayal. It was conspiracy to murder. Travis paced in circles. We were supposed to play the grieving widow act, not rewrite the damn war. Vanessa trembled. I did not think he would survive. He was left for dead. You do not just come back from that. You do not outlive an entire command betrayal unless what? Travis turned to her. Unless someone helped him. For the first time, Vanessa realized. Mason might not be working alone anymore. And that meant something worse than court was coming. It meant war. At school, Max was quiet. Too quiet. His teacher, Mrs. Redmond, noticed the drawings first. Crayon sketches with two men, one with sunglasses, one in a military uniform. She knelt beside him gently. Who is this, Max? He looked up. My dad. She smiled. Which one? Max's voice dropped. I have two dads now. But only one of them watches me from across the street. She froze. What do you mean? He is not supposed to be alive. Mommy said he died. But I saw him. I waved. Mrs. Redmond kept her expression calm, but her pulse jumped. Later that day, she reported the conversation to the school counselor. The counselor filed a child welfare alert, stating a potential hidden guardian, possibly the real father, may be alive and observing. That report reached Child Services. And from there, it went straight to the courthouse. When Mason opened the envelope days later, he saw something that nearly broke him. Request for emergency review, filed by Max Holt, age 8. The reason? Because my real dad came back. I saw him. I wanted to know I still remember. Mason set the paper down. His eyes burned. And for the first time in this long, brutal journey, he let himself cry. It started with a single email. Subject line, unreported parental activity, possible deceased parent alive? Principal Dana Hernandez stared at the screen, unsure what to do next. The school had handled missing parent cases before, soldiers killed in action, parents deported, even prison scenarios. But this was different. The counselor's report was detailed. Max's story matched the timeline. The waving, the drawings, the whispered confessions to classmates. And most damning of all, Max had written a full sentence on his family tree assignment. My real dad is back. He just does not want to scare Mommy yet. Dana picked up the phone and called the county office. Within hours, Child Services opened a temporary case file titled Holt, Mason, status, allegedly deceased, now active. They attached the sealed VA record, the death certificate, and a flagged military data point submitted by a third-party tip Mason Holt cited in San Marcos auto lot. That tip had come from Randy Moore. The collector Mason confronted weeks ago, now scared he was part of something bigger. By the next morning, a legal assistant in the courthouse scheduled a mandatory pre-hearing review. And Mason? He received the court summons by hand, delivered not to his fake P.O. box, but to Hawk's shop. The system had found him. Only this time, it was not to silence him. It was to hear him. The page was torn at the edges, slightly singed, but still legible. Mason stared at it, pulled from a plastic bag Hawk had recovered from Travis's backyard fire pit. Mixed in with old bills, fake dealership slips, and shredded photos, this letter had somehow survived. The envelope read, "To my family, only if I do not return." It was written in Mason's own handwriting. He remembered sealing it, tucking it away for Vanessa to find if the worst ever happened. He never expected her to burn it. The ink was faded, but the words were sharp as razors. You have every right to grieve. You have every right to move forward. But if you are reading this, then I trusted you to protect our legacy, not sell it. Tell our boys I love them, that I never gave up on coming back, that I fought for them until my last breath. Mason folded the letter, fire damage and all, and placed it in a clear evidence sleeve. This was no longer about revenge. This was about truth, about the version of him his sons deserved to know. Not the liar's version, not the man who abandoned them, the real one. He clipped the sleeve to his court folder, labeled Personal Exhibit A, and stared out the garage window. The storm was no longer coming. It was here. The bar was dark, tucked behind a rural gas station off the freeway. Travis sat in a booth, hoodie up, eyes bloodshot. Across from him sat two men, one with biker patches, the other in slacks and sunglasses. You said he was dead, the first man growled. He was, Travis hissed. They buried him. Gave the damn flag to Vanessa. Then how is he breathing? Filing court motions. I do not know. Travis slammed his fist on the table. All I know is he is coming after us. The second man leaned in. You used us. Took the money. Got sloppy. You never told us his unit was dirty. You said it was just a debt job. Clean exit. Travis swallowed hard. It was clean. Then why is a ranger driving around with audio files, then forensics, and sealed mission logs? Travis froze. They knew. And if they knew, it meant someone inside was talking. You need to disappear, the first man said. I cannot. We are mid-trial. Vanessa will lose everything if I vanish. She already did, the second man replied. You just do not know it yet. Travis stepped outside, palms sweaty, and lit a cigarette. He stared at the sky. The stars were out, but one was moving. Slow. Bright. A drone. Watching. Recording. He flicked the cigarette, heart pounding. Mason was not just alive. He was watching. Always. The truck was back. Mason had reclaimed it quietly after tracking it through Randy's forged sale documents and DMV leaks. Travis had left it parked behind a fake dealership outside Lockhart, thinking no one would look twice at a junk lot. But Mason knew the smell of his engine. And now it rumbled under his control again, not to return home, but to return to war. Inside the glove box, he installed a silent GPS beacon, military grade, untraceable, battery-backed. It sent live location updates to Hawk's laptop every 10 minutes. Hawk monitored it in shifts, logging routes, stops, and idle time. That night, as Mason drove the truck to a storage facility outside town, he added something else beneath the seat, a wired microphone with a 20-hour recording loop. Travis had used this truck like a trophy. Now it would record everything he said inside it. Mason wiped the steering wheel clean, closed the door gently, and left. 2 nights later, Travis reclaimed the truck, unknowing, unsuspecting. Mason watched from across the street as Travis slid in, cranked the ignition, and laughed to himself. The device blinked twice. Recording started. Back at Hawk's garage, Mason sat beside the laptop screen. The tracker pinged once. Then again. Then the audio began. Vanessa is cracking. If she folds on the stand, I am dead. Literally. Do not forget who planned that ambush. He was not supposed to survive. Mason leaned closer. There it was. The confession. And with that, the last nail in Travis's coffin. The envelope was thick, stamped by the Travis County District Court and sealed with urgency. Mason opened it on Hawk's workbench, fingers steady, breath slow. Official hearing notice, custody, property, fraud, and identity reinstatement. Plaintiff, Mason Holt. The date, October 12th, 9 a.m. sharp. His day, the day he would stop being a ghost. The letter included Vanessa's official response, an affidavit full of defensive language and nervous wording. Her lawyer, a mid-level suit named Ellis Drayton, had filed for a delay. Denied. The judge overseeing the hearing? Honorable Ellen Vance. Mason had done his research. A widow of a fallen Green Beret. 20 years on the bench. Known for one thing, zero tolerance for military fraud. Hawk chuckled when he read it. She is going to chew Vanessa apart. Mason stayed quiet. He was not here to watch someone suffer. He was here to reclaim what was his. His identity. His legacy. His son's. He zipped the evidence folders into a matte black briefcase. Taped inside the lid were 4 photographs, one of each boy, one of Vanessa and Travis together, and one of himself in uniform, arms around Max and Eli. A reminder of why this was not just about revenge. It was about truth, and Mason was ready to carry it into the light. Logan dimmed the lights inside his apartment and hit play. The projector glowed against the blank wall. Footage rolled, clean, time-stamped, organized like a documentary of betrayal. Vanessa laughing over wine with Travis. Travis handing a wad of bills to a dealer. Travis driving the truck while muttering to himself. He was never supposed to make it out alive. Mason sat motionless, fist clenched. Logan clicked through folders, narrating like a soldier briefing a mission. We lead with the VIN swap, he said. Establishes fraud. Then the fake death certificate, filed using your credentials. Next, we move into bank transfers. Offshore accounts under shell companies tied to Travis's alias. Mason nodded slowly. And then we end with the truck audio. The kill switch. Logan turned, serious now. We can take the whole courtroom with this. But once we do, it will not just stay inside these walls. There will be fallout. Military brass. Press. Maybe even indictments. I'm not here for damage, Mason said. Logan tilted his head. I am here, Mason said again, to take my boys home. The screen froze on a final still Vanessa, sitting in her kitchen, laughing. Behind her? A photo on the wall. Mason's old unit. Framed like a trophy. Mason stood up. That laugh ends in 12 days. Judge Ellen Vance arrived at her chambers 15 minutes before court opened. A former military wife turned senior district judge, she had seen every lie, manipulation, and broken oath the family courts could offer. But today, something different waited on her desk. A matte black box. No return address. No courier ID. Just one label. Evidence, custody, fraud, identity. Recipient, Honorable E. Vance only. She opened it slowly. Inside were 4 USB drives, a stack of notarized files, and a single photograph, Mason Holt. In uniform. Alive. She pressed play on the drive labeled Start Here. Her face changed almost instantly. The screen showed Vanessa laughing beside Travis. Then, a VIN record appeared. Then an audio file played. We made sure he never came back. If she folds on the stand, I am done. Judge Vance reached for her glasses. The legal documents that followed were pristine. Affidavits from military sources. A statement from a child counselor. A notarized claim from Max Holt saying he had seen his real father alive. She leaned back in her chair and whispered, This is not a custody case. This is a war story. She buzzed her clerk. Schedule a private pre-review with all parties. No delays. No exemptions. The war hero was walking into her courtroom, and she was going to make sure the whole truth walked in with him. Vanessa paced her bedroom barefoot, hands shaking. Her inbox had exploded overnight. Subject line screamed, "Custody review. Judge Vance assigned. Evidence admitted under emergency clause. Plaintiff status changed. Mason Holt. Alive." She dropped her phone and screamed. Travis sat on the couch, smoking, clearly rattled but trying to hold his mask. This was supposed to be sealed. We paid the clerk to bury the motion. Well, guess what? Vanessa snapped. He did not stay buried. She picked up a vase and hurled it against the wall. You told me no one would ever find out. Travis stood slowly. You wanted him gone more than I did. She froze. He stepped closer. You burned the letter. You filed the papers. You sold the damn truck. Vanessa's breathing quickened. You do not get to pretend you were just misled, Travis whispered. You were the plan. Her hand slapped him across the face before she even realized it. You want to go down together? She hissed. Fine, but I will not lose everything alone. Travis stared at her, the woman he once seduced into betrayal and now barely recognized. I think you already have, he said. Vanessa stood frozen in the broken glass. For the first time, she truly understood. Mason was not just alive. He was in control now. Mason did not recognize the SUV at first. It was silver, parked outside Hawk's garage. Government plates. Two people stepped out, a woman in a blazer and a younger man holding a tablet. Mr. Holt, the woman asked. Mason stepped forward slowly. Yes, we are with Child and Family Services. You are not in trouble, but we need to speak with you now. He nodded, motioned them inside. They sat in the back room beside Hawk's old engine block. We received multiple verified submissions that you are, in fact, alive, the agent began. Your children have both confirmed awareness of your presence. One has drawn consistent images matching your description. Their teacher has confirmed emotional distress related to identity conflict. Mason stayed silent. We need to ask one question, the woman said. Are you planning to pursue physical custody? Mason took a long breath. Yes. She nodded. Then this meeting did not happen. We were never here. But we have to prepare a shadow report in case you need protective standing. She handed him an envelope. Inside, legal pre-approval to initiate emergency custodial action during court if abuse or fraud was proven live in session. This is your safeguard, she said. If it goes bad, you use this. Mason looked at the paper and realized the system had just handed him a legal weapon. That night, Travis tried to clean house. He tore up bank records, deleted files, smashed an old burner phone against the sink. Anything that could trace the mission fraud, the fake accounts, the offshore deals. But no matter how much he destroyed, he could not delete the past. There were still witnesses. Like Randy Moore, the collector who saw him swap vents. Like Logan, who tracked every illegal signature and filed it with timestamps. And most of all, like Mason, who had recorded everything. Travis opened the garage and stared at the truck. The same truck he once called scrap metal. No, it was the most dangerous thing in his life. He kicked the fender and screamed. I should have burned you with him. The truck sat still, quiet. But inside, its hidden mic recorded every word. The morning of October 12th began with thunder. Not a storm, the sky was clear, but the kind of thunder that came from beneath your skin. Mason stood in front of the mirror at Hawk's shop, wearing his Army Ranger dress uniform for the first time in years. Clean lines, bronze stars, polished boots. He adjusted the tie, straightened the nameplate. Holt. The last time he wore this uniform, he boarded a military plane believing his family would be waiting when he returned. Today, they would see him, and they would not recognize the man he had become. Hawk knocked on the door. You sure about this? Mason zipped up the garment bag and slung it over his shoulder. Yes. Hawk handed him the flash drive. Everything is loaded. Audio, video, affidavits, timestamps. It is all there. Mason nodded. Let us go. They walked out into the early light. The truck waited at the curb, green paint gleaming like a scar. Mason stepped in, engine rumbling to life. It was not just a vehicle. It was his return. As he pulled out, Hawk saluted from the sidewalk. Mason drove toward the courthouse with one thought repeating like a battle drum. I was erased. Today, I reclaim everything. The Travis County Courthouse had seen veterans, widows, even scandal, but never this. The courtroom was already half full when the doors creaked open. A uniformed man walked down the aisle, step by slow, deliberate step. Heads turned. Gasps filled the air. One woman dropped her phone. A lawyer muttered, "Is that?" And at the front of the room, Vanessa froze. Mason Holt, alive, in full ranger dress uniform. The judge looked up from her papers, blinked once, then removed her glasses. "Mr. Holt," she said quietly, "you may approach." Mason walked to the plaintiff table and set down his black briefcase. He looked directly at Vanessa, who backed up in her seat, hands shaking. "I would like to formally submit my motion to revoke death status and assume full custodial and legal standing," he said. "Motion noted," Judge Vance said. "Welcome back, Sergeant," Vanessa's lawyer whispered. "We need a recess." "Denied," the judge snapped. Across the room, Travis shifted uncomfortably. He had known this day might come, but he never expected the man he betrayed to walk through those doors like death itself had changed its mind. The court clerk played the first audio file. The room fell into eerie silence. "We made sure he never came back. If she folds on the stand, I am done." Travis's voice, clear, panicked. The judge's expression hardened. "This recording was captured from within Mr. Holt's stolen truck, Your Honor," Mason said calmly. "The same truck that was illegally re-registered and sold under a forged name. Admitted into evidence," Judge Vance said. "Continue." Next came the offshore banking slips. Then the falsified death certificate with side-by-side signature comparisons. Then the therapist letter confirming emotional manipulation of both boys. And finally, the image that broke Vanessa's silence. Max's school drawing, a soldier standing behind two children, shadowed but watching. Vanessa began to cry, but the judge did not flinch. "This court," she said coldly, "will not be manipulated by tears built on fraud." She stood. "You are under oath. You will answer every question. No delays. No escapes." Vanessa looked at Travis, who had gone pale. "And Mason?" He sat still, like a soldier watching enemy lines collapse. "You told me he would never come back." Vanessa screamed, slamming her palm on the table. The court gasped. "Order." Judge Vance barked. Vanessa stood, mascara streaking down her face. "You told me this was safe. You said he would be wiped from every record. Ms. Holt, you will control yourself," the judge warned. But it was too late. The truth was boiling out now. "I sold the truck because I needed money. I thought he was dead." "You do not understand. He was never supposed to survive that mission." Gasps echoed again. Travis slowly stood from the defense table. "She was not alone in this," he said. "She filed the paperwork. She buried the letters. She signed every form." The judge stared at them both. "I will hear from both parties." Separately, Mason remained silent, hands clasped in front of him. Vanessa finally turned to him. Tears. Red eyes. But Mason did not look at her like a victim. He looked at her like a man who had seen the battlefield, and now finally saw the betrayal that hurt worse than bullets. The flash drive slid across the table like a loaded weapon. "Play the second file," Mason said. "Timestamped 5 days ago. Captured inside my stolen vehicle." The clerk pressed play. "You do not just come back from that. Not after what we did." Travis's voice. The courtroom fell silent. "We rerouted the coordinates. Changed the mission file. It was supposed to look like an ambush. I got paid for clean intel. He was not supposed to crawl out of it." Murmurs filled the benches. The judge narrowed her eyes. Vanessa buried her face in her hands. But the tape continued. She signed everything. The false report. The sealed file. She used her access to push it through. All I did was take the money. She made him disappear. When it stopped, there was no applause. Only silence. Cold. Dense. Final. Judge Vance turned slowly toward Travis. Is that your voice? He stood frozen, then nodded once. Yes, Your Honor. The judge turned to Vanessa. Did you knowingly participate in the falsification of a U.S. Army death report? Her voice cracked. I thought he would not survive. No, Judge Vance said firmly. You hoped he would not. Ellis Drayton had seen enough. He packed his briefcase in silence as Vanessa sobbed beside him. Where are you going? She asked, her voice trembling. Ellis tightened his tie. You lied to me. You told me your husband died in combat, that you were tricked. But you were the trick. I panicked, he cut her off. You staged a burial. You destroyed evidence. And now I am standing here next to a man who wore the uniform I swore to honor as a legal officer. She reached for his arm. He stepped back. I will not represent this anymore. Then, to the judge, Your Honor, I respectfully withdraw from representation. So noted, Judge Vance said. Ellis looked at Mason. I hope they give you everything back. And more. Then he walked out, leaving Vanessa alone, surrounded by truth, stripped of armor, abandoned by the last man on her side. Mr. Holt, I believe there is one final submission, the judge asked. Mason stood. He pulled out a sealed manila envelope and handed it to the clerk. Paternity confirmation. Requested 2 months ago. Ordered through private labs across state lines. Verified by court order. The clerk opened it. The judge read it. And Vanessa held her breath. Max Holt. Biological match confirmed. Eli Holt. No biological match. Gasps echoed across the courtroom again. Mason looked at Vanessa. Her face turned white. But he did not shout. He did not accuse. He simply said, I always knew. I saw it in his eyes. Vanessa broke down sobbing. But I raised him, Mason continued. I taught him to walk. I tucked him in for 5 years. I showed him what it meant to be brave. That does not change with blood. The judge leaned forward. And do you still seek custody of both children? Yes, Mason said. Because fatherhood is not DNA. It is presence. And I never chose to leave. The courtroom was silent again. But this time, it was respectful. Judge Vance turned the final page of the report. All submitted evidence has been reviewed. Fraud is confirmed. Fabrication is confirmed. Parental manipulation is confirmed. She looked down at Vanessa, who could barely meet her gaze. Ms. Holt, you knowingly deceived this court, the federal government, and your own children. You are hereby stripped of full custodial rights pending further criminal proceedings. Vanessa collapsed into her chair, shoulders shaking. Then, the judge turned to Mason. Mr. Holt, you are hereby granted immediate and uncontested custodial authority over both minors. Mason exhaled, slow, deep, not triumphant, not proud, just relieved. He turned and saw Max watching from the gallery. Their eyes locked. The boy smiled, just barely, but enough. The truth had landed. The lies were burning, and the father was back. The courtroom lights dimmed as the clerk activated the overhead projector. Mason remained standing beside his table, hands clasped behind his back, expression calm but steady. This moment was not about ego. It was about finishing the truth fully. Please refer to the screen, the judge said. On it appeared a sequence of financial statements, color-coded, time-stamped, connected by a clear digital trail. Each payment, each forged form, each withdrawal from Mason's survivor benefits account. This is a federal account, Mason explained, that was never closed because my file was flagged as Kia, no body recovered. Access requires spousal authorization and beneficiary override. Judge Vance tapped her pen. And Ms. Holt executed that override? Yes, Your Honor, Mason said. Using my service credentials I gave her during my last deployment for emergency only. He handed the judge a folder. Inside, notarized bank slips, Cayman Island routing numbers, and one final transfer, $28,000 moved 3 days after Mason's funeral. Thank you, the judge said. This confirms financial fraud, identity abuse, and misuse of veteran funds. She turned to Vanessa. You stole from the United States military. You used your husband's death to buy silence, control custody, and erase his existence. Do you deny any of this? Vanessa did not answer. She could not, because the entire room had already seen it. And for once, silence told the whole truth. A new voice spoke from the front row. Your Honor, said Angela Pearson, the agent who had visited Mason privately just days ago, we request permission to speak as representatives of Child and Family Services. Judge Vance nodded. Go ahead. Angela stepped forward confidently. We observed direct emotional damage inflicted on the children by the falsified narrative of their father's death. The older child, Max, shows signs of suppressed trauma caused by being told his father abandoned him. The younger child, Eli, is experiencing confusion over the truth of his own origin. She paused, then continued. Despite not being a biological match, Mr. Holt has requested full custodial guardianship over both children, including Eli, with no distinction made. We find this to be a reflection of high parental stability. She turned toward Mason and smiled faintly. We have reviewed every interview, every witness report, and every hour of footage. Child Services officially supports Mr. Holt as the primary, full-time custodial parent for both minors. The courtroom murmured again. Judge Vance wrote something down, noted and approved. Vanessa let out a sob, loud and sudden. But the court no longer heard her, because the law had, and it had made its decision. Your Honor, Mason said quietly, reaching into his briefcase one last time, I have one more submission. He handed the clerk a brown envelope stamped in red, Confidential, U.S. Army Internal Tribunal Command. Judge Vance opened it. Her brows furrowed. This is from the Department of Military Integrity. Yes, Your Honor, Mason confirmed. A classified tribunal reviewed my case in parallel. They traced the field coordinates that rerouted my unit into a kill zone. The change came from an unauthorized login tied to a civilian address. He looked across the room, directly at Travis. That address belonged to Mr. Cole. The courtroom stiffened. Inside the letter were more than words. It contained digital signatures, IP logs, military keycard access reports. Travis stood slowly. This is fabricated. No. Mason cut in. This is yours. The judge looked up sharply. Clerk, issue a motion for detainment pending federal review. Two bailiffs moved forward. Travis panicked. I want a deal. I want to testify. She pushed it through. Vanessa gasped. You liar. Enough. The judge snapped. Sit down or you will both be removed in cuffs. But Travis was already in handcuffs. And Vanessa was next. The final witness was unexpected. A man with thick arms, faded tattoos, and a denim vest stepped into the courtroom. He looked around, then at the judge. I am here to speak on behalf of the San Marcos Auto Club. Name? The judge asked. Vincent Kells. People call me Brick. And your connection? I did the original VIN swap on the '67 Ford. Travis paid me cash. Said it was stolen from a dead man. The judge blinked. Did you know that was false? I found out a few days ago, when Mason showed up at my shop and did not kill me, even though he had every reason to. He looked at Mason. That man does not want revenge. He wants his kids, his name, his life. The judge paused. Do you have proof? Vincent pulled out a burner phone and placed it on the table. I recorded every deal Travis made at our garage. He thought we were dumb. We are not. We know when someone is setting up a soldier. Mason did not move. The judge took the phone and nodded. You just turned this case into a federal felony investigation. Vanessa's knees buckled. And Mason? He finally allowed himself to breathe. Not in triumph. In justice. The tension in the courtroom had become a living thing. Judge Vance had recessed for 45 minutes to review the complete evidence package. The bench was empty now, and everyone waited like soldiers in a field, silent, alert, bracing for the final shot. Mason stood alone beside the table. Across from him, Vanessa sat pale and hollow, clutching a tissue that had long since shredded between her shaking hands. Travis sat in cuffs, flanked by two deputies, eyes bloodshot and jaw clenched. Even the courtroom sketch artist had stopped drawing. The door creaked. Everyone turned. Judge Vance returned to the bench, eyes unreadable, folders in hand. She sat slowly, placed the evidence before her, and looked around the room. This has been one of the most disturbing cases I have presided over in 20 years. No one spoke. Deception, betrayal, financial abuse, identity falsification, and the emotional endangerment of minors have all been confirmed. She turned to Travis first. Mr. Cole, you are remanded into federal custody pending charges of conspiracy, impersonation, fraud, and intentional endangerment of a U.S. service member. The deputies stepped forward. Travis did not protest, because even he knew this was over. Judge Vance turned next to Vanessa. Ms. Holt, before sentencing is considered, the court will allow you one final opportunity to speak. Choose your words carefully. Vanessa stood. Her voice trembled, but her posture remained proud. I lost control, she said. At first it was panic. Then it became survival. I did not expect Mason to come back. I did not think. The judge cut in. You did not think? Or you did not care? Vanessa swallowed hard. I was angry. I felt abandoned. You were not abandoned, Judge Vance said coldly. You abandoned the truth. Then, to Mason, Mr. Holt, do you wish to address the court? Mason stood, his uniform still crisp, his voice clear. I came back to silence. I came back to find my truck gone, my sons calling another man father, and a folded flag collecting dust on my old bookshelf. He turned toward Vanessa. But I did not come back for revenge. I came back because two little boys still carry my blood, my name, and the truth deserves to be louder than the lie. He paused. I may have been erased, but I did not stay buried. The courtroom stayed absolutely still. Judge Vance folded her hands. This court hereby restores full legal and living identity status to Sergeant Mason Holt, United States Army Ranger. You are now officially and permanently reinstated. A quiet breath moved through the gallery. She continued. Custodial guardianship of Max and Eli Holt is granted solely to Mr. Holt. This ruling includes school access, health care, and relocation permissions. She turned toward Vanessa one final time. Ms. Holt, you are sentenced to 5 years probation with mandatory counseling, community restitution, and federal oversight. Further financial investigation remains open. Vanessa broke. Her body collapsed into sobs. Her knees gave out. She was not the cold woman Mason had once feared. She was now just empty. The judge looked to Mason. Sergeant Holt, welcome home. Mason gave a single nod. Not of victory, but of closure. The moment the gavel dropped, 2 federal marshals entered the courtroom. Travis looked up, confused, sweating. Wait, no, I cooperated. I gave names. You confessed to staging a kill order on a U.S. Ranger, the marshal said. You do not walk from that. The cuffs were snapped tighter. His jacket ripped in the process. Mason watched from across the room, not with vengeance, but with resolution. Travis looked back as they dragged him toward the door. I will burn this whole story if I have to, he shouted. But no one listened. The judge had already left the bench. Vanessa stared at the floor, silent. And Mason? He turned toward the courtroom door, where his sons were waiting with their counselor and child services agent. Max ran first, then Eli. Mason dropped to one knee and opened his arms. They crashed into him, arms tight around his neck. He held them both, one son by blood, one by bond, and whispered, "We are going home." The courtroom was empty now. Only echo remained. The next morning, Vanessa sat alone in a county interrogation room, wrists trembling as a probation officer read her terms. No unsupervised visits. Mandatory psychological counseling. Community service begins next month. All contact with financial institutions must be cleared through federal review. She barely blinked. Her eyes were red, not from rage, but from exhaustion. The weight of everything she had built on lies had finally collapsed. Her new lawyer, assigned by the court, sat beside her, silent. You were lucky, the officer said without emotion. The judge showed leniency. 5 years probation instead of prison time. Vanessa whispered, "He will never let me see them again." No, the officer corrected. You will never earn the right unless you change. Her hands shook as she signed the forms. Paper after paper. A punishment written in her own signature. She had told herself this would never happen, that Mason would stay gone, that no one would ever connect the forged forms, the Vin trail, or the guilt she kept buried. But now she understood something far worse than legal consequence. Her sons no longer looked at her with love. They looked at her with distance. And no judge could undo that. The truck rumbled slowly through the Austin backroads, wind slipping through the cracked window as Mason drove toward the new house on the edge of town. Max sat beside him in the passenger seat, legs too short to reach the floorboard. Eli sat in the back, holding the framed photo of Mason in uniform, the one he had stared at for years, not knowing it was truth. "You okay back there?" Mason asked. Eli nodded. "Is this really our home now?" "It is ours," Mason said. "No lies. No yelling. Just truth." Max looked over. "What happens to her?" Mason paused. "She has her own road now, but ours does not cross hers anymore." They pulled into the driveway. A small house, one story, quiet yard, nothing fancy. But it was theirs. Inside, Mason showed them their new room. 2 beds. One wall filled with shelves of old comics. The other wall, covered with framed drawings they had made years ago, that Mason had secretly saved. "How did you get these?" Max asked, eyes wide. "I kept them," Mason said, "even when the world thought I was gone." The boys ran into his arms. Not out of guilt, not out of fear, but because they finally believed he had never truly left. 1 week later, the truck sat in the driveway, doors open, wires hanging, metal glinting in the sun. Mason was under the hood, grease on his hands, sleeves rolled high. Max handed him a wrench. "This is the same truck you rebuilt before, right?" he asked. "Same one," Mason replied. "But this time, we are rebuilding it together." Eli stood on a step stool, carefully aligning the new Ranger badge on the front grille. "You remember where this went?" Mason asked. "Right here," Eli said proudly. They tightened the bolts together. The sun moved slow behind them, casting long shadows on the lawn, not the shadows of a haunted past, but of a present being remade. Later, Mason climbed behind the wheel. Both boys slid in beside him. He turned the key. The engine roared. Same growl, same power, but everything else had changed. Mason looked at his sons, then out the windshield toward the road ahead. It was not about escaping the past. It was about driving forward with it, rebuilt, reclaimed, and now fully alive. Mason stood on a quiet hillside just beyond the military cemetery. A small breeze moved through the grass. In one hand, he held his old unit's flag, folded, worn, but never forgotten. In the other, a letter. The last letter he had ever written before that final deployment, the one Vanessa had burned but Hawk had helped him recreate from memory. His son stood behind him, silent. This was not a funeral. This was a resurrection. He stepped forward to the lone marble headstone of his father, also a veteran, lost in a war Mason barely remembered. "Dad," he said softly, "it took me too long to come back. But I made it." He knelt down, placed the letter at the base of the stone, and tapped it once, like a code only Rangers would understand. Behind him, Max spoke. "Is this where you came when people thought you were gone?" "No," Mason said, standing tall. "This is where I came to remember who I was." He looked down at the badge on his chest. Not the uniform one. The invisible one, made from scars, silence, and survival. Max stepped beside him. Then Eli. 3 figures standing in the same line. One rebuilt family. Mason looked toward the fading sun. No enemies left. No lies remaining. Only the truth, alive and standing taller than ever before. The truck rolled down the Texas back road as golden light broke through the trees. Max sat in the passenger seat with the window down, wind in his face. Eli sat in the middle, holding a camera, snapping photos of the fields, the sky, and his father driving. Mason smiled. Not because everything was perfect, but because it was honest now. They passed the old neighborhood, the courthouse, the school where Max once stared across the fence and waved to a ghost. Not anymore. The boys knew the truth now, and they would carry it for the rest of their lives. At the next red light, Mason looked at them. "What do you want to do today? Can we go to the lake?" Max asked. "Can we race the boat again?" Eli added. Mason nodded. "You lead the way." As the light turned green, the truck pulled forward, not just down a road, but into a future they rebuilt with truth, courage, and time. No more fear. No more lies. Just a man and his sons. Driving forward, 1 mile at a time. Some wounds never fully disappear, but some men refuse to let those wounds define them. Mason Holt was supposed to be a folded flag in a shadowed living room. Instead, he became a father, a fighter, and a name the world will never forget. Let us ask you something. If you were erased by the very people you trusted most, would you stay buried? Or would you rise like Mason did? Tell us in the comments. Where are you watching this from right now? Which city? Which country? We would truly love to know. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something deep, like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more bold, thrilling, emotional stories like this, subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next story that will break your heart and rebuild it in the same breath. We will see you soon, in our next thriller, in our next storm, in our next story of epic revenge. Until then, take care of yourself, and take care of those who never stop believing in you.